Hi, I'm Frank Schildiner. I'm the writer of It's Always Darkest, the book following the series of the Nine, in the world of the Nine, Secrets of the Nine. It is the first book in the series that comes from a different direction. The previous book, A Feast Unknown, which has quite a reputation, uh, tells the story from the point of view of Lord Grunneth, the erstwhile Tarzan, but not, and Doc Caliban, and it's quite a book, one of my favorites in the world. The next two books, Mad Goblin and Lord of the Trees, takes place from the point of view of those two characters as they approach the war against the Nine. So, in contemplating another book, I proposed the Meteor House, uh, a book that takes place at a different period with a different type of character. Instead of a character going after the actual Nine, he's going after the candidates, the near immortals that serve the Nine and are usually very famous people in history and literature. So this character, Langston DuPont, has a whole set of issues of his own. You can read that in the book. He is the Dark Avenger, the archetypical Dark Avenger. He is not the Shadow, he's not the Spider, he's not the Green Hornet, the Green Llama, Batman, the Black Bat. I could go on like this for a very long time of all these characters. We'll throw in the Purple Scar and the Crimson Mask, but you get the idea. But he's all of those. In this world, he is the Dark Avenger, and it comes through in its own sort of way. Now, this book takes place in the 1970s, and it's a very 70s book, as you're going to see in the first chapter. I'm not going to read to you the prologue because that's just set up. You need that just to get a kind of idea where you're working with. But right now, it's taking place where he's about to go after a woman named Seiko Midori, another candidate who, if you like Japanese history, you might understand who she is, but I'm not going to tell you. So let's start. I walked through the streets of South Central Los Angeles. Cars lined the boulevard, and men and women filled the sidewalks. They were dressed like peacocks, bright colors in their polyester plumage. People talked fast, and life was perpetually moving at a higher rate of speed than the rest of the world. Steel shuttered storefronts businesses squatted next to smoky, dark bars and signs for places long since forgotten. Strip clubs with theatrical names like the Institute for Oral Love were situated next to tiny temples promising false paths to enlightenment. I pushed past the street vendors hawking their wares, shouting like merchants in an eastern souk. Transform the language from modern English to ancient Arabic, and the chant was universal. Goods of all type on sale, the best prices. Did you want a new suit of clothes? A woman? A pretty man? A child? A powder that will let you see heaven? All available for the right price. Just name your vice and pony up the cash. I was here to buy, but the commodity I sought was far pricier and a great deal more dangerous: information. As Master Swan Tzu once wrote, if you know your enemy and you know yourself, your victory will not stand in doubt. If you know heaven and you know earth, you may make your victory complete. It was a principle that kept me alive since I was a child. When I fought in the Great War as a flyer and an intelligence agent for the Russians and other Allied powers, my focus was information. It saved my life many times, especially when I faced some of the bizarre creations of German scientists. This was a strategy I planned on using in this first phase in my battle with the Nine. The pool hall I sought was a popular one, though not for the game. The locale was the property of a prominent councilman who I knew was selling drugs on the side. One of these days his double life would bring his death, but not today, not by me. I wasn't out to save the world. A one-man crusade was the stuff of fiction. If I murdered every drug dealer and pimp in Los Angeles, what would follow? Other lowlives would move in, more guns and violence to the streets. Final result, more blood on the street, and the drug trade continued unabated. It was a quest only worthy of Sisyphus, and I wasn't interested in pushing that rock. The pool hall was named Henry's, but everybody called it The Spot. The clientele consisted of drug dealers and pimps on the prowl. There were similar places in every city in the world. Nationality, skin color, language, or manner of dress were unimportant in the end. This was a place for the trade of goods. It didn't matter whether those items were powders or humans. The men who inhabited this long, smoky room were there to be seen and conduct deals to show they were important in their small world. I'd seen similar venues in Paris, Bangkok, Lagos, Detroit, and a dozen other cities across the globe. The game was ultimately the same: commerce of items that could get the seller sent away from prison or murdered. The object of my search was precisely where I hoped he would be, near the back wall on a bar stool, his pearl hat resting on his head. He was dressed in an expensive-looking gray pinstripe suit, white shirt, and a First Queen's Dragoon Guards tie. Blind Paul wasn't a member of that or any other regiment. He probably viewed it as a piece of irony only a few would comprehend. I approached and perched on the stool by his side. His dark glasses swiveled my direction, his gray mustache twitching slightly as he tried to assess who was on the seat. "You're aging well, old man." My words were spoken in a deep tone of voice, harsher than my normal style of speech. This was the speech pattern of the man he knew from years before. In those days, I had painted the streets red, all at the behest of the Nine. "You still sound like you're at the bottom of a well, and you move like a leopard in a zoo. I thought I recognized your step, but I thought it couldn't be. That cat has to be gone and buried in the bad old days. Yet here you are, sounding and moving the same, and I'm just a broken down old blind man." Blind Paul spoke in a metered pattern, an almost rhythmic arrangement of words. He was unique and unforgettable. "The day you're broken down is the day you're in a pine box." I repeated a version of the statement he had once made to me 20 years ago. I'd been assigned to exterminate a slaving operation of an offshoot of the Ku Klux Klan, which had annoyed the Nine for reasons I still haven't fathomed. Blind Paul's face split in a wide-toothy grin. His mahogany skin possessed an undertone beneath the surface, the sallowness that came from age and the body's earliest stages of breakdown. It might happen to me one day, a long, long time from now, if accident, murder, suicide doesn't get me first. "You got that right, boy. What do you want now? I hope you're not planning another one of your damn fool campaigns and rampages. These streets have enough violence without your type of crazy thinking making it worse." Blind Paul swiveled his head in my direction, not quite pointing his face at my face, but close. It was disconcerting, like speaking to someone listening to a different conversation. "Not if I can help it. But what I need to know, people might not want to tell me. I'll get the information one way or another." My reply was curt and harsh, though I did like Blind Paul. He had been born blind but refused to allow that as a hindrance in his life. The man was an institution in these streets. Words of wisdom were his coin, and young and old alike, too young and old alike, a guru for the lower end of society. Blind Paul sighed and leaned against his cane. "Then you best tell me what you want so I can get you out of here. Some of these young fools are starting to rumble and strut." I chuckled, having spotted the looks and hushed talk. A few of the up-and-comers were working up their courage to come and confront me. They didn't realize how big a mistake that would be, but I honestly didn't care. The men trying to get themselves ready to threaten me were garbage. Drug dealers, pimps, and thieves. They might be good to their mothers and give money away wherever they walked. In the end, they were leeches, sucking on the lifeblood out of men and women, which they used to prop up their flagging egos. It was a universal truth, no matter what version of the tale you chose to tell. I dealt with triad members, Yakuza soldiers, Sicilian and Jewish gangsters, Latin American bandits, and more in my long life. Few were willing to hold a mirror up to their soul and see the darkness within. This I understood better than anyone. I'd been stained since childhood. My life was a blood-soaked highway of violence and death. I killed my first man at age 5, slicing his throat at the demand of my teachers. In the service of the 9, I had performed 10 missions, all of which resulted in enough corpses to fill a graveyard. Compared to me, these young crooks were children playing with pop guns, emulating the heroes of the big screen. The young ones these days are getting trained, I said. Martial arts, Chinese and Japanese styles mostly. I need to know who is teaching them to fight and who is supplying the low-cost drugs that are easier to get each year. Blind Paul threw back his head and laughed. It was a rich belly laugh full of good humor. You do ask the questions, don't you? You think a poor old blind man like me would know such nonsense? No, but you'll know who's involved. I'll pay them a visit and find out the rest. Otherwise, I might start asking some of the men in this place, and I won't be subtle. I didn't hide the edge in my voice. Blind Paul nodded once. I do believe you would, and that would be a damn shame. Some of these boys aren't bad at heart. One day they might even contribute to the city. I might have a link in the chain that you're looking to forge. Have you ever heard of the Half-Turk? I shook my head, remembering I was speaking to a man without vision, cleared my throat and said, no. Real name is Virgil Soul. He's a doctor with a big spread in Holmby Hills. You can't miss it. Bright yellow, they tell me, and used to be owned by a singer or some such named Penny Lowe. Blind Paul gesticulated, demonstrating his disregard for the man in question. Tell me more. I was glad the blind man still had his ear to the important happenings. Finding a bright yellow house in Holmby Hills shouldn't be too difficult, even at night. I hear his dad was a gangster killed out east, and his mama is from Turkey. That's why the name, Half-Turk. He runs a whole bunch of clinics and a drug company. Word out there is he finds hungry kids and sends them somewhere to be trained up. Then they come back and get to selling product. You know what I'm getting at? Blind Paul leaned against his cane again, his head swiveling to a pair at the far end of the pool hall. I didn't glance in their direction, preferring not to wave a red flag before the metaphorical bowl. I'm going to speak to this half-Turk, and you shouldn't care what happens to him in the end. I jumped a little ahead in the conversation, hoping to leave before I was forced to act. The blind man shrugged his shoulders. I can't see how he's doing much good in the end. Oh, I'm glad we're controlling our own streets now. But they're going to get real bad soon. Kids getting involved, fast money makes them forget the short life they're risking. Ah, hell, too late to run now. He was right, not that I would have run in the end. The two men he'd noted earlier were approaching, their hands clenching and unclenching. They were spoiling for a fight, that much was clear. I estimated they were newcomers here who needed to prove their strength among a crowd of their fellow predators. I was meant to be the victim, but I wasn't going to comply. The taller one was a handsome man with tan skin, a medium-sized afro, and eyes covered by dark glasses like Blind Paul. He wore a large black felt hat, a white fur coat, and a bright multicolored shirt. His clothes were well tailored, and a black cane with a gold top was clutched in his ring-covered left hand. The other was slightly shorter and with darker skin and a square-shaped face that gave the impression of fleshiness. He possessed a blocky build that would fall to fat if he didn't watch his eating and exercise daily. His clothes were startling, guaranteeing to get noticed anywhere he happened to appear. His suit was pure polyester, shiny and white, and he wore a matching shirt in the same color. A broad, multicolored bow tie was knotted around his neck, and his huge hat was as white as the rest of his clothes. This cracker bothering you? The man in white in white spoke in a fast, jerky manner. He vibrated like a racehorse looking to explode from the gate. His compatriot shook his head slowly, a deliberate act to demonstrate his calmness and control, a true contrast in style. Sorry to interrupt you, my brother. This gentleman isn't a white boy. He's at least part Chinese or some such. A visitor from the mysterious East, perhaps? I was impressed with the way this man pronounced the word gentleman. The word itself was a compliment, the intonation, a clear insult. I'd heard Japanese corporate directors speak in the same manner with no greater skill. The man in white chortled loudly, a wheezing giggle that grated on the nerves, half chink and half whitey. I guess that makes him a rice cracker. The last line was spoken in a near yell, a joke he was sharing with the rest of the denizens of the pool hall. They appropriately howled with laughter, though the mirth died down quickly. They realized I was neither impressed nor embarrassed. In fact, I was looking at these two men without any visible expression or emotion. This was confusing to them. Normal people react in some way, anger, humiliation, or even joining in with the jest. I just sat before them, as immobile as a stone statue. If they knew my background, they'd realize insults couldn't move me. I'd heard worse when I was old enough to understand the meaning of the taunts. Got nothing to say, right, cracker? The man in white was nearly screaming, his eyes narrowing as my lack of response continued. Blind Paul stood and nodded at the handsome man on his right. This is Mr. Max Gold, newly sprung from inside. His friend here is Mr. D, though he calls himself Petey something. Brothers, this is a friend of mine. Step away or you'll be plain sorry. Max Gold touched the black cane in his hand to his forehead, took an elaborate step back and smiled. Any friend of the blind man gets no beef from me. Pleasure to meet you. I gave him a nod and rose to my feet. I would have said something in response, but Petey in the white suit was building himself up to a rage. I could see the fury coming from a distance. It was like watching a wave picking up strength as it was about to crash hard on the beach. I don't step away from no rice cracker, blind fool. I'm PDW, and I'm so bad the devil wanted me to marry his ugly daughter. He leapt into an elaborate, theatrical, kung fu-styled stance, shrieking and moaning. Max Gold and Blind Paul stepped away, making sure a pool table was between them and myself. Probably wise. I spotted the knife and small revolver PDW tried to hide in his elaborate costume. Petey howled and threw a high crescent kick towards my head. A good move, an unorthodox attack that came from an odd angle towards my face. Also incredibly stupid against someone with a little training. I blocked the attack with a forearm and threw a fast punch into Petey's chest. He fell, overbalanced, landing on his back. I hoped the man would stay down or walk away, but I doubted that would be the result. Petey was out to prove himself, show his comrades he was a dangerous man capable of joining their unofficial brotherhood. PDW leapt to his feet and rushed forward, his lead hand feinting for my eyes while his rear hand fired a knife hand strike to my collarbone. Another clever move. Didn't take much force to shatter that bone and would render the victim unable to use that arm. I ignored the feint towards the eye, sidestepped the knife hand. Forming a fist and extending my pointing knuckle, I struck Petey's armpit. Striking a nerve cluster under the arm caused incredible pain, but also caused a temporary loss of the use of the arm. Fuck, Max Gold breathed out the word, his calm demeanor momentarily dropping. What the hell was that? Phoenix Eye Fist. I never took my eye from Petey and added, walk away. I'm trying to be gentle. Gentle this motherfucker, Petey snarled and tried to sweep my legs. He was well trained in the moves, but his inexperience was clear in his every action. Old boxers referred to this obvious actions as telegraphing, a move. PDW went far beyond telegraphing. He was practically singing every attack before he made it, complete with dramatic gestures and screams. I stepped back, sighed, and decided I'd had enough. I could simply kill PDW and be done with it. Slaying a man was far easier than being gentle. I could simply kick him in the throat and watch him choke out, or crush his skull with a blow and watch his brains bleed out. I knew a dozen ways to end a life without weapons. I didn't want to do that tonight, and not for humanitarian reasons. Buddha help me, but I love fighting. I like striking my enemy and watching them fall. I love the martial arts, the inner peace, and the outer violence. Right now, I wanted to release a tiny bit of that latter on this loudmouth. Sliding forward, I round kicked Petey's leg. The merciful side of me was invoked, and I merely struck his sciatic nerve, rendering the leg useless. Landing forward, I pistoned my lead elbow across the side of Petey's jaw. Same arm snapped downward in a hammer fist strike to the man's groin. As I recoiled the hammer fist strike, my other hand slammed in the man's nose, rendering the cartilage little more than morsels of mush. My other foot lashed out, and the ball hitting Petey in the chest, sending him sailing backward over the nearby pool table. I stepped slowly in case he tried to rise, but I needn't have bothered. By my estimation, the young criminal was suffering from a set of broken ribs, a shattered jaw, and a nose that was little more than powder and fluid than a body part. He wouldn't be walking around and threatening people for a while. Hopefully, in the pain, he would find a better path. Crossing to Max Gold and Blind Paul, I pulled out a roll of money. Peeling 8 $100 bills, I handed the small stack to the handsome criminal. See, he gets treated. Any left, keep for yourself. If it's more, he can figure it out himself. My false rasping voice hid the enjoyment I felt from this minor use of my skills. Max Gold looked at the money, then at me, and nodded. Without a word, he crossed to the bar, picked up the phone, dialed 0, and spoke softly to the operator. I nodded and turned to Blind Paul, placing the rest of the roll in the man's hand. I stepped back. Thank you. Live long and happy, old man. Blind Paul smiled and tucked the money away. Don't take this the wrong way, but I'll live longer and happier if you stay out of my neighborhood. I hope your trail of gore and agony don't catch up to you one day. I chuckled again and opened the pool room door. It already has, old man. It already has. With that gloomy truth, I left South Central. Holmby Hills was a mystery to me, but it wouldn't be for long. That's the end of chapter 1. So, Langston DuPont, as you can see, he's quite the character. I used a little bit of my martial arts training from 20 years of fighting in martial arts. I actually was training today when I filmed this. It was a real pleasure to write it, and I'm very grateful to Mike Croteau, Paul Spiteri, and Scott Eckert for giving me this opportunity to take some time in there, in that world. I'll be available for any conversations you want to have on it. I'm looking forward to Wynn's version of the 9, the Monster on Hold, and I hope to see you all at Pulp Fest soon, and virtual FarmerCon immediately.